Hello everybody, my name is Joshua Garcia and today we're talking about kegerators, specifically how to make a simple one for yourself. Now bottling is a great way to go. It's obviously something that we start off as homebrewers doing because there's not a lot of upfront cost. You might have to buy some bottles, but if you can get people to save bottles, if you can buy a couple base cases of beer and just save those bottles, you know, you're virtually able to take your homebrew and package it for free. So that's a big upside there. But with that comes some downsides. Of course, they are made of glass, so they're a bit fragile. You know, if something's not measured right, you could have bottle bombs and explosions in your closet. If you are taking them out to the beach or the lake, you're not really supposed to have glass out there, so that's a bad idea. And when it comes to fridge and your storage space, a lot of bottles in that fridge, it takes up space that you want for food and other things. So, you know, it can be sort of cumbersome in that regard. Then also if your wife comes home and sees you passed out on the couch around 10 bottles, she's gonna know what happened. You know, there's no hiding it like with a keg where you can just have one glass and say, I only had 5, but really you didn't. You know what I'm saying? But for sure, the biggest issue is going to be the process. I mean, having to clean and sanitize every single bottle, then fill each and every single one up with the homebrew, cap every single bottle, and then on top of that, 2 weeks waiting for them to carbonate, maybe even 3. Once it's all said and done, I'm happier to have bottles than I am to probably have like the kegerator, but getting to the final product as far as a keg is just such a better quality of life. So if you're looking to get into kegging, but it seems like a high cost to buy your own kegerator, I do have some tips on making a very easy one, doing it as simply as possible for not a lot of money. And there's other things you can do to save money in other areas. This is kind of one that's sort of middle of the road as far as ease, usability, and price. Now for this process, all you're really gonna need is a handheld hacksaw. You can get a very tiny one, just basically a saw blade with a handle. You're gonna need some aluminum foil tape, some HVAC tape. It's mainly used to you know, secure ducting and leaks like that. So it works really well for the fridge. Now a good thing to look at is the used market, and if you have the space, you might be able to find just like a full-size fridge. Hopefully not one that's really big, but if you can find a cheap used fridge that's like older, it's like a top door freezer and like a big space at the bottom, you could probably fit a couple kegs in there and you don't even need to do any cutting or conversion at all. So if you have the space for something like that, that's also a great way to go. Keep in mind that a bigger fridge is going to cost more in energy, and depending on how old it is, it might not be as efficient as a new fridge is today. For me, I found that the best one was gonna be this 4.4 cubic mini fridge from Hisense. They carry it at Lowe's. You can buy it online. I went into the store and just found it off the shelf, but it was $210, so not too expensive for a brand new, very sleek and nice looking mini fridge in my opinion, that doesn't have a freezer. So the conversion was literally just widening the door and cutting off the shell. Now when you get started with cutting, you're gonna realize it's super easy. I mean, it's just thin plastic and insulated foam. So that hacksaw is gonna glide right through it. You don't need a lot of force. Once you get started through a corner of the plastic, it's gonna just keep going. So you can do a couple practice cuts if you want, just to kind of get a feel for it, but you'll be able to cut that foam out pretty quickly and very easily. It does make a little bit of a mess, so you might wanna take it outside or somewhere where it's easy to vacuum and clean up afterwards. But try and get it down to as flush as you can with the back of the door. Once you have it nice and flush and everything like that, give it a test close, make sure everything fits inside, and then we're gonna wanna grab our aluminum foil tape and just tape over that foam. We don't want the cold air seeping into the insulation, so that's what the aluminum tape is there for. Just create a nice seal and block the air from escaping. And once you've cleared all that stuff up and taped it up, it should fit a 5-pound CO2 tank in the back and a 5-gallon Cornelius keg in front with no problem. You'll have a little bit extra space to put a, you know, case of beer, like a 12-pack of cans, or maybe glasses to keep chilled. But that's a great little setup. Side note, your CO2 tank will actually last you longer if it is refrigerated as well. In this kegerator, you might be able to fit a 10-pound tank, but I think 20 pounds is pushing the limits a little bit. 20 pound, I don't have a 20 pound to test, but that one might need to be outside of the kegerator. And as I will explain in this next part, you don't want to be drilling into the side or back of the keg. Okay, so a quick rundown of how your refrigerator works is through temperature equilibriums and the transfer of heat. Apparently there's some law in thermodynamics that says that energy can't be destroyed, only moved. So the heat in your refrigerator has to be moved out of the refrigerator, and kind of works like your wart chiller. So there's a cold side of the coil where the refrigerant is expanding and getting cold. Then the heat inside the refrigerator is pretty much going to absorb and the equilibrium happens. So the heat will transfer into the coil at that point. That refrigerant will then come over to a hot side and be expelled into the outside air. Because of this, everything is one closed loop, so we do not want to puncture a refrigerant line. If you puncture the refrigerant line, all that refrigerant is going to leak out and your refrigerator will be broken and unusable. So we really want to make sure we're drilling into a spot that doesn't have any coils. Now, for sure, without whatever refrigerator you're using, the door is always going to be a safe bet. So if you're using a chest freezer, or you're using a tall refrigerator or anything like that, the door is always going to be a safe spot for you. Now for this unit here, I'm relatively sure that the cold coil is on the back of the refrigerator. I can see condensation, so I'm seeing the cold side of the coil on the back of the refrigerator, and I can feel heat very much on the sides of the refrigerator. So with that knowledge, I can kind of figure out that the coils are wrapped around the sides and back, so we know we don't want to drill onto those. Now for me though, I have a tap tower. I want it to be elevated taller. I'm kind of a tall guy and I don't really want to bend down and, you know, fill up my glass down here. I want it to be higher up. So I'm going to be drilling it through the top of this where I'm pretty sure there's no coils, but I have no way of being 100% because the schematics just don't show me. So we're going to drill a hole and see whether or not refrigerant leaks out. And as it turns out, I did not drill through any refrigerant lines, so that's another great thing about this specific mini fridge. If you want to do a tower on the top or handles on the door, you can do any configuration of tap handles that you would like to do. Tower is a great option. I think it looks sleek. I know it's a little bit more expensive than just a door-mounted handle, but for me that was worth it. And now it just looks like a really nice kegerator. Like I bought it like that, and it cost me less than $300 to do that. Really the only drawback is that for this size I can only do one keg at a time. Now I think this unit will support 2 torpedo kegs because they are a little bit thinner. It's about 16 inches side to side and the torpedo kegs are about 8 inches, so they should fit just perfectly, especially if you give them a little bit of an offset. However, they're expensive. And if you're trying to save money with the kegerator supplies as far as the keg, CO2 tank, and tap handles go, there's a couple of great options. One, for Cornelius kegs, you can buy them used. There's plenty of deals online all the time, and they're pressure tested and good to go, so you know they're going to be trusted. Buy that instead of buying a brand new keg, and definitely buy the CO2 tank used as well. I didn't realize I bought a brand new CO2 tank. It was really expensive, and then I took it into my homebrew supply store to be filled and found out that it's actually just a tank swap. So they took my brand new tank and they gave me a used tank filled with CO2. So that was absolutely pointless. I will admit they are hard to find, but if you get lucky and you can find one, buy that instead of paying full price for a new CO2 tank. And if you don't want to spend a lot of money on a tap tower or tap handles either, picnic taps work really well. They are super cheap. They sometimes come with the keg that you're buying. Instead of going all in and buying the tap handle when I first purchased everything else, I waited a little bit. But the kegs that I bought came with these picnic taps, or I think they were like an add-on for extremely cheap. And just open the door, pour yourself a beer, put it back, and you're good to go. I had no issues doing that. It was super easy and would have kept with that for a long time, but eventually I did think I wanted the convenience and the nice look of the tap tower. Another little side note is that it's actually more efficient to have your fridge filled with things. So if there's some extra space, if you have the one keg and there's some extra space in there for some other things, you might want to put extra drinks in there, maybe a gallon of water or anything like that. Anything that you would like to chill is good to keep in there. The more stuff you have, the more efficiently your system will actually run. So don't be afraid to fill that sucker up. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, leave a like, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.